The accusation in the shadows. New Orleans, 7:45 a.m., a storm before the trial. The air was thick with tension, the kind that clung to your skin and sent a warning down your spine. Judge Olivia Carter gripped the steering wheel as she maneuvered her black sedan through the congested streets of downtown New Orleans. Today wasn't just another day in court, it was the start of the most important trial of her career. As the first black female federal judge in Louisiana, she had faced her fair share of adversity. But nothing like this. The Marcus Johnson case had drawn national attention. A lawsuit against the police department for wrongful arrest and racial profiling. If the ruling went against law enforcement, it could set a legal precedent that would shake the system to its core. And not everyone wanted that to happen. She pulled up to the courthouse steps, her eyes flicking to the gathering of reporters behind the barricades. Cameras flashed, microphones were raised, and voices clamored to get her attention. Olivia exhaled sharply. Not today. Instead of using the front entrance, she turned toward a side door, where she could slip inside unnoticed. Right finger before we continue. If you believe in bringing hidden truths to light, make sure to subscribe to Black Struggles. This channel is dedicated to powerful stories like this that challenge injustice and open eyes to the realities of our world. Don't just watch, be part of the movement. She was halfway across the lot when she spotted him. A young white officer, barely in his late 20s, stood rigid near the side entrance. His eyes locked on her like a predator tracking prey. His uniform was crisp, his stance firm, but there was something else, something unsettling in the way he assessed her. She reached for the judge's ID hanging around her neck. Already familiar with the drill. She had been questioned before. She had been doubted before. But today, of all days, she wouldn't tolerate it. She held up her badge, her voice unwavering. "I'm Judge Carter. I have court in 10 minutes. The officer didn't even glance at it. Instead, his hand drifted toward his belt, his fingers brushing the cold metal of his handcuffs. "There's been an incident nearby," he said, his voice clipped. "You match the description of a suspect. I need you to answer a few questions." Olivia blinked. "Excuse me?" She had prosecuted hundreds of cases, overseen thousands of trials, but nothing could have prepared her for the bitter irony of being racially profiled on the very day she was presiding over a racial profiling case. Speech balloon if you think what just happened to Judge Carter is completely unfair. Drop a 1 in the comments. If you think otherwise, drop a 0 and let's discuss. No opinion? Then hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more powerful content like this. Red circle. Want to see more stories that expose the struggles of the black community? Then don't forget to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to Black Struggles. Your voice matters, and together, we can make a difference. She squared her shoulders, forcing herself to stay calm, even as her blood boiled beneath the surface. "Officer," she said slowly, each syllable carefully measured, "I don't have time for this. I need to be inside that courtroom." She held her badge out again, higher this time, willing him to just look at it. He didn't. His jaw tightened, his grip on the handcuffs firmed. And then, he stepped forward. "I don't care who you say you are, ma'am," he snapped. "You're going to need to come with me." Her breath hitched. This was escalating, fast, and she knew exactly how this ended. She had seen the body cam footage in too many trials, an officer's misplaced authority. A misjudged moment, a life ruined. Would she become another statistic? Before she could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "What the hell is going on here?" Both Olivia and the officer turned toward the new arrival, Sergeant James Bennett. A seasoned black officer with graying hair and a hardened expression. The moment his eyes landed on Olivia, they widened in shock. "Judge Carter?" Her name dropped like a stone into the silence. She gave him a tight nod, her patience wearing razor thin. "Yes, and I'd like to get inside now." Bennett's gaze snapped to the younger officer. His lips pressed into a thin line. "Stand down." The officer hesitated, his fingers twitching near his belt, as if still contemplating whether or not to push his authority. "That's the judge," Bennett barked. "You want to lose your job today?" A long, tense moment stretched between them. Then finally, reluctantly, the young officer stepped back. His lips curled into a scowl as he muttered under his breath. "She matches the description." Bennett's glare was sharp enough to cut steel. "And if you'd taken 1 second to look at her badge, you would have known better." Olivia exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Without another word, she strode past them, her heartbeat hammering in her ears. But as she walked through the courthouse doors, something about the encounter unsettled her. She had dealt with racism all her life. She had fought her way through courtrooms filled with men who doubted her, challenged her, underestimated her. But this was different. Something in that young officer's eyes unnerved her, not just bias, but something colder, sharper, more dangerous. And as she entered the courtroom, a sinking feeling settled deep in her gut. That wasn't the last time she'd be seeing him. Not by a long shot. The trial begins, a dangerous confrontation. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with anticipation. The case of Marcus Johnson versus the New Orleans Police Department had attracted national attention, turning the courtroom into a battleground for justice. The gallery was packed, reporters scribbling furiously in their notepads, activists watching with laser focus, and members of the police force sitting stiff-backed in their seats, their presence a silent warning. Judge Olivia Carter adjusted her robe as she took her place at the bench. The moment she banged her gavel, silence rippled through the room. "Call the first witness," the bailiff announced. The defense attorney, Damon Caldwell, a sharp-dressed, well-paid lawyer representing the police department, leaned back confidently in his chair. He wasn't just defending the officer who arrested Marcus, he was defending the entire system. "Your Honor, we call Marcus Johnson to the stand." Marcus stood, his shoulders squared but his hands trembling slightly as he approached the witness stand. The 25-year-old black man had spent the last 6 months reliving the trauma of that night, the night when his life was upended for no reason other than the color of his skin. "Mr. Johnson," the prosecutor, Monica Reyes, began, "can you walk us through what happened on the night of your arrest?" Marcus took a deep breath. "I had just gotten off work," he said, his voice steady but raw with emotion. "I was standing outside my apartment complex, waiting for my ride. That's when a police cruiser pulled up." His jaw tensed. His fingers gripped the edges of the witness stand. "The officer got out, hand on his gun, and told me to put my hands up. I asked him why, and he said I fit the description of someone they were looking for. Before I could say anything else, he grabbed me, shoved me against the car, and cuffed me, right there, in front of my neighbors." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Olivia's grip on her gavel tightened. "Fit the description." The same words that Officer Ryan Thompson had used on her this morning. "Did the officer provide any proof that you were involved in a crime?" Reyes pressed. "No," Marcus said firmly. "He just assumed I was guilty." "And what happened next?" Marcus exhaled sharply. "He searched me. He went through my pockets, my phone, my bag. He found nothing, because there was nothing to find." The tension in the room was palpable. Olivia glanced toward the jury, watching their reactions. Some looked visibly uncomfortable, others stared ahead, unreadable. "And then?" Marcus swallowed. "He still took me in. They kept me overnight, didn't let me call my family until the next morning. I had no record, no charges against me, but they treated me like a criminal anyway." A hush fell over the room. And then the doors to the courtroom opened. Every head turned. Officer Ryan Thompson stepped inside. Olivia's breath hitched, but she forced herself to remain composed. Ryan's uniform looked just as pristine as it had outside. But something in his face had changed. He wasn't just here as a spectator. He was here as a witness. "The prosecution calls Officer Ryan Thompson to the stand," Reyes announced. Ryan walked toward the witness box, his expression unreadable. Olivia clenched her jaw. She hadn't even had time to process what happened earlier that morning. And now, he was sitting in her courtroom, testifying in a case that could reshape the city's justice system. As Ryan took his seat, Reyes approached him. "Officer Thompson," she began, "can you describe your role in Marcus Johnson's arrest?" Ryan sat up straighter, exuding false confidence. "I was on patrol that night. We received reports of suspicious activity in the area. When I saw Mr. Johnson, he looked out of place." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Out of place. The same phrase she had heard 100 times in racial profiling cases. The same phrase that translated to, "he was black, and I assumed he didn't belong." And what exactly about Mr. Johnson seemed out of place? Reyes pressed, her voice sharp. Ryan hesitated, just for a second. Then, with a straight face, he said, "He was acting nervous. Looking around too much. It seemed suspicious. Olivia's pulse quickened. She had read the case file front to back. She knew that Marcus had simply been standing on the sidewalk, waiting for a ride. There was nothing suspicious about that. You claim Mr. Johnson appeared nervous. Reyes continued, stepping closer. Did he run? Did he resist arrest? Did he have anything illegal on him? Ryan hesitated again. No, he admitted. Then why did you arrest him? Ryan's throat bobbed as he swallowed. It was a misunderstanding. A scoff came from the gallery. Olivia's hands curled into fists under her desk. A misunderstanding? A man's life was derailed over a misunderstanding? Let me rephrase, Reyes said, her voice cool and controlled. Was Marcus Johnson arrested because of something he did? Or because of an assumption you made? Ryan's eyes flickered toward Olivia. And in that moment, she knew he recognized her. She saw it in the way his fingers twitched. The brief flash of unease behind his eyes. He knew exactly what he had done to her outside that courthouse this morning. And now, he was realizing that the same bias he had used to judge Marcus Johnson was the same one he had used on her. He shifted in his seat. His confidence was starting to crack. It was a misunderstanding, he repeated, but this time, his voice wavered. Reyes wasn't letting up. Officer Thompson, did you at any point confirm that Marcus Johnson was actually the suspect before you arrested him? Ryan's jaw tightened. No. Reyes took a step forward, delivering the final blow. So, just to clarify, you arrested a man who had committed no crime, had no record, and was doing nothing but waiting for his ride home? The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Ryan's face was turning red. He knew he had no defense. And Olivia knew that this case was bigger than Marcus Johnson now. This case was about every black man who had been falsely accused. Every unjust arrest. Every assumption made based on skin color. And it wasn't just Ryan Thompson who was guilty of it. It was the entire system. She sat up straighter. This wasn't just another trial anymore. This was a reckoning. And she was going to make damn sure that justice was served. A system built to protect itself. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Officer Ryan Thompson sat in the witness chair. His face rigid, his jaw clenched, his eyes darted between the prosecutor, Monica Reyes, and the judge's bench, where Judge Olivia Carter watched him with unwavering scrutiny. She could see it in his face, the cracks forming in his confidence. He wasn't expecting to be questioned like this. Reyes paced in front of the jury, her voice steady and deliberate. Officer Thompson, you stated earlier that Marcus Johnson fit the description of a suspect. Could you clarify what exactly that description was? Ryan shifted in his seat. A young black male in dark clothing. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Olivia felt her stomach tighten. That's it? That was the justification for tackling a man to the ground, humiliating him, and throwing him in a holding cell for a night? Reyes' lips curled into something resembling disgust. Let me get this straight. The suspect you were looking for was simply a black man wearing dark clothes? Ryan hesitated. It was more than that. Then what was it? Reyes cut him off, stepping closer, eyes blazing. Did Mr. Johnson exhibit any threatening behavior? Was he running? Did he match the suspect's height, weight, tattoos, facial features? Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no answer. Because the truth was, there was no real suspect. The courtroom was dead silent. Then, Damon Caldwell, the police department's slick defense attorney, stood abruptly. Objection, Your Honor. This line of questioning is leading. Letting? Olivia thought bitterly. Or just dangerous to your case? She leveled a calm gaze at Caldwell. Overruled. The officer may answer. Ryan exhaled sharply, shifting in his seat. It wasn't just the clothes, he said, his tone defensive now. He was acting suspiciously, looking around too much, pacing back and forth, like he was waiting for something. Reyes let the words hang in the air. Then, with surgical precision, she struck. You mean he was waiting for his Uber? Ryan's face visibly tightened, because according to time-stamped phone records, Mr. Johnson had ordered a ride at exactly 8:23 p.m. And his driver was set to arrive at 8:30. So tell me, Officer Thompson, how exactly does a man waiting for his legally hired transportation look suspicious? Ryan looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. Caldwell shot to his feet again. Objection. Overruled. Olivia cut him off swiftly. Reyes turned back to Ryan, her voice now cold. Officer Thompson, isn't it true that your department has an unofficial performance quota for making stops and arrests? Ryan's head snapped up. His knuckles went white. Caldwell shot to his feet again. Objection. This is a baseless accusation. Reyes turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to submit a copy of an internal email sent by Officer Thompson's superior, Captain Landon Graves, dated 2 weeks before Mr. Johnson's arrest. She handed a printed document to the bailiff. Olivia scanned the contents quickly. Her heartbeat quickened. Quota expectations. An emphasis on proactive stops to keep crime statistics high. A specific push to increase detainments of young men loitering in high crime areas. It was coded language, but Olivia knew exactly what it meant. It meant officers were expected to make stops based on appearance, not on crime. It meant officers like Ryan Thompson were rewarded for racial profiling. The jury exchanged glances. A ripple of whispers moved through the gallery. Caldwell looked like he was about to combust on the spot. Ryan's breathing had turned shallow. He knew what this looked like. Reyes delivered the final blow. So, Officer Thompson, I'll ask you one more time. Why did you really arrest Marcus Johnson? Ryan didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Backlash in the hallways. The trial broke for recess. Olivia remained seated at the bench as the gallery emptied into the hall. She needed a moment to process. Because this wasn't just about Marcus anymore. This was about a system. A system that encouraged, enabled, and rewarded this kind of behavior. A shadow loomed over her desk. She looked up. Sergeant James Bennett, the man who had saved her from Ryan Thompson's arrogance outside the courthouse that morning. She motioned for him to step closer. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? She asked quietly. Bennett's face was grim. Yeah, and it's worse than you think. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. Judge Carter, I need to talk to you off the record. There's something about this case you don't know. A chill ran down her spine. Tell me. Bennett glanced toward the door, as if making sure they were alone. Officer Thompson, he wasn't acting alone that night. A corrupt web of deception. That night, Olivia sat in her office, staring at the manila envelope Bennett had slipped onto her desk before leaving. She hesitated before opening it. Inside was a series of police reports. Reports that never made it into court evidence. Her stomach twisted as she read. Marcus Johnson wasn't the first. There were dozens of cases, almost identical to his. Young black men, stopped, detained, charged with nothing. All of them were profiled in the same way. All of them had been picked up by a specific group of officers. Ryan Thompson's name appeared on multiple reports. But he wasn't alone. There were more names. Captain Landon Graves, Lieutenant Darren Fisk, Sergeant Nolan Cross. A network of officers who were systematically targeting and arresting men of color. And at the bottom of the stack, a handwritten note. Judge Carter, be careful. This isn't just a bad cop problem. It's bigger, and they're watching you now. The unseen hand. A system that fights back. Judge Olivia Carter sat frozen in her office. Her eyes locked on the stack of documents Sergeant James Bennett had handed her. A list of cases, all with the same pattern. Young black men, stopped for no reason, arrested with no evidence, processed through the system before being quietly released with no formal charges, but with their names now permanently flagged in police databases. And one name appeared on too many reports. Officer Ryan Thompson. But that wasn't the worst part. It wasn't just Ryan. There was an entire network of officers behind it. A system working in the shadows. Her fingers hovered over the note at the bottom of the stack. Judge Carter, be careful. This isn't just a bad cop problem. It's bigger, and they're watching you now. A shiver ran down her spine. She had seen corruption before. She had exposed it, fought it. But this was something else entirely. And she had no idea how far it went. The warning. A knock at the door snapped her out of her thoughts. She closed the file just in time as her clerk, Emily, poked her head in. Judge Carter, Captain Landon Graves from the police department is here. He says it's urgent. Olivia's breath hitched. Graves, one of the names from the file. She steadied herself. Send him in. The door swung open, and in walked Captain Graves, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his 50s with gray at his temples and a polished, practiced smile. He took a seat without waiting for permission. His hands folded neatly on his lap. Judge Carter, he greeted smoothly. I wanted to personally address what's happening in your courtroom. There's been some misunderstanding." Olivia leaned back in her chair. "Here we go. What kind of misunderstanding?" she asked, feigning curiosity. Graves sighed as if this whole thing was a minor inconvenience. "This case, it's being blown out of proportion. Officer Thompson was simply following procedure. Our department has policies in place for a reason, and I'd hate to see a good cop's career ruined over a simple lapse in judgment." Olivia arched an eyebrow. "A lapse in judgment? You mean wrongfully arresting a man based on his skin color?" she asked. Graves chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "I understand where you're coming from, Judge, but let's not pretend we don't both know how this city works." He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping just enough to feel like a threat. "There's a system in place. And it's bigger than this one case. It's bigger than you." A chill settled over the room. And just like that, Olivia knew exactly what this was. This wasn't a courtesy visit. This was a warning, a test. They wanted to see if she would bend, if she would play along, if she would keep the machine running. She smiled, but it was razor sharp. "Captain Graves, let me be very clear." She leaned in just as close, her tone deadly calm. "This is my courtroom. The system you're talking about? It doesn't work in here." The captain held her gaze for a long moment. Then, he smiled again. "Fair enough," he said, standing up. "I just wanted to offer some guidance. After all, you have a promising career, Judge Carter. It would be a shame if it were derailed by the wrong battle." He adjusted his coat, nodded politely, and walked out, a thinly veiled threat. And Olivia knew, without a doubt, that things were about to get a whole lot worse. The man who knew too much. That evening, Ryan Thompson sat alone at a bar, staring into his untouched drink. He had thought this trial would be routine, a simple case, a misunderstanding, just like his superiors had told him. But after today's testimony, after the way the prosecutor, Monica Reyes, had backed him into a corner, after Judge Carter's stare had burned through him, he wasn't so sure anymore. Something was off. He could feel it in his gut. The problem was, Ryan knew too much, and he knew it wasn't safe to start asking questions. He reached for his phone, hesitating before dialing a number. A gruff voice picked up. "What?" Ryan swallowed. "I need to talk." A pause. Then, in a slow, measured voice, "Not on the phone." Ryan's stomach twisted. Then the line went dead. A sudden disappearance. The next morning, Judge Olivia Carter arrived at the courthouse to shocking news. Sergeant James Bennett was missing. The officer who had given her the evidence. The only person who knew what was really going on behind the scenes. Gone. His car was found abandoned a few blocks from his home. His phone, wallet, and gun were still inside. No sign of struggle. No sign of where he went. Just gone. Olivia's blood ran cold. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a message. She had pushed too far. And now they were pushing back. A storm was coming. And Olivia wasn't sure if she would survive it. The reckoning, a dangerous truth. The vanishing act. Judge Olivia Carter sat in her chambers, gripping the latest police report. Sergeant James Bennett was gone. Not just missing, erased. No one in the precinct had seen him leave. No security footage showed his departure. His apartment was untouched. His wallet, badge, and service weapon still on his nightstand. It was as if he had never existed. Olivia's stomach churned. She had known she was stepping on dangerous ground. But now, the ground was being ripped out from under her. A sharp knock on her door made her jump. It was Monica Reyes, the prosecutor, holding her own stack of files. Her face unreadable. "I need to talk to you," she said, stepping in and closing the door behind her. She didn't sit down. That was Olivia's first clue that something was wrong. Reyes dropped the files onto Olivia's desk. "Something's off, Judge." "No kidding," Olivia muttered. "Bennett's missing." Reyes shook her head. "Not just that. Ryan Thompson has disappeared too." Olivia's breath caught. "What?" "He was scheduled to testify again this morning." Reyes tapped the case file. "Didn't show. His commanding officer claims he called in sick. But when we sent someone to check, his apartment was empty." Olivia's pulse pounded in her ears. First Bennett, now Ryan? This wasn't coincidence. This was a cover-up. Ryan's desperate choice. 20 miles outside of New Orleans, Ryan Thompson sat in his car, parked in the shadows of an abandoned gas station. His leg bounced anxiously. He had turned off his phone hours ago, pulled the SIM card, ditched his police cruiser. He wasn't stupid. He had seen how this worked before. Cops who knew too much didn't get to walk away. And now, he knew too much. After what he saw in those reports, after what Captain Graves had said to him the night before, he couldn't unsee it. It wasn't just racial profiling. It was bigger. An entire network of officers working under the radar, planting evidence, controlling crime stats, covering for each other. And when someone got too close, they disappeared. Like Bennett, like himself. If he wasn't careful, his fingers tightened around the steering wheel. He needed to get out. Needed protection. There was only one person who might be able to help him. With shaking hands, he turned his phone back on, just long enough to make one call. It rang twice before a voice answered. Judge Carter. Ryan swallowed hard. I need to talk, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I need to do it in person. A pause. Then Olivia's voice, sharp and cautious. Where are you? A meeting in the shadows. That night, Olivia parked in a secluded alley behind a closed-down diner. Her heart pounding. She had called Reyes before leaving. Made sure someone knew where she was, just in case. Ryan was waiting, his hoodie pulled over his head, his posture tense. He climbed into the passenger seat, looking around like he expected someone to be watching. Talk, Olivia said. Ryan exhaled shakily. They're going to kill me. She felt a chill creep up her spine. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, his leg bouncing. He looked like a man on the verge of breaking. I was part of it, he admitted, voice hollow. Not the worst parts, but enough. They called it a proactive policing unit. But really? It was just a way to keep arrest numbers high. We targeted young black men in certain areas, pinned whatever we could on them, made the city feel like we were cleaning up the streets. Olivia's stomach churned. She had suspected this, but hearing it confirmed, that was different. Ryan shook his head. But it's worse than that. Some guys, they got bonuses for high arrest numbers, promotions, and if a cop didn't play along, they got reassigned. Or worse. Like Bennett? Olivia asked, her voice tight. Ryan's jaw clenched. I think they killed him. Her breath caught. I tried asking questions last night. Ryan continued. But Captain Graves, he told me to drop it. Said, this isn't a fight you want to pick. And then this morning, I got a text from an unlisted number. He pulled out his phone and handed it to her. One message. Walk away, or you won't walk at all. Olivia's fingers clenched around the phone. This was real. This was happening. And they were running out of time. A deadly trap. Ryan exhaled sharply. I need protection. Judge, I need to go to the feds. Witness protection. Something. Olivia nodded, already thinking through their next steps. I know someone, she said, an FBI contact. A car engine roared down the alley. Olivia's gut twisted. Something wasn't right. She reached for the door handle. Then, bang, a shot exploded through the windshield. Ryan shouted in pain, grabbing his arm as blood bloomed through his sleeve. Down, Olivia yelled, slamming the car into reverse. Tires screeched as she floored it, heart hammering, swerving just as a second shot shattered the side window. Ryan groaned in pain, pressing his hand to his bleeding arm. We need a hospital, he gasped. No, Olivia snapped, skidding onto an open road, speeding toward the only safe place she could think of. They'll be waiting at hospitals. We're going to Reyes. Ryan's head fell back against the seat, his face pale. I was right, he muttered weakly. About what? His eyes fluttered. I was never supposed to leave that courtroom alive. The betrayal. 15 minutes later, Olivia barged into Reyes' apartment, dragging Ryan inside. Monica's eyes widened. What the hell happened? They tried to kill him. Olivia snapped. Ryan collapsed onto the couch, his breathing shallow. We need to move fast, Olivia said. We need to get him to the feds. She stopped. Monica's expression had changed. The way she stood, the tension in her jaw. And then, Olivia saw it. The unlocked phone on the counter. The open message thread. The name at the top of the screen? Captain Landon Graves. Olivia's blood went cold. Reyes wasn't just a prosecutor. She was part of it. And she had just led Ryan into a trap. The ultimate betrayal. Nowhere left to run. The moment of realization. Judge Olivia Carter stood frozen in Monica Reyes' dimly lit apartment. Her breath caught in her throat as her gaze locked onto the open text message on Monica's phone. Judge Carter is bringing Ryan to you. You know what to do. L.G. Landon Graves. Captain Landon Graves. The man who had threatened her in her office. The man behind the police corruption ring. The man who wanted Ryan dead. And Monica was working for him. Her pulse pounded like a drum in her ears. Monica took a slow step toward the counter. Toward her phone. But Olivia moved first. She snatched it. Tell me this isn't what I think it is. Olivia said, her voice deathly calm. Monica didn't answer. Ryan, wounded and pale, let out a slow breath from the couch. His fingers twitched toward his gun, but he was too weak to reach it. Monica. Olivia tried again, gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Tell me you haven't been feeding them information this entire time. Monica sighed, rubbing her temples. It's not that simple. Olivia. Olivia's stomach twisted. God, she really did it. You sold me out. Olivia whispered. Monica's lips pressed into a thin line. This was never just about you. Ryan coughed weakly, shifting on the couch. Wasn't about me either. Huh? He muttered. Monica hesitated. For the first time, her expression cracked. A flicker of something almost like guilt. You don't understand, Olivia, she said, voice lower now. You think this is just about Ryan? About Marcus Johnson? You have no idea how deep this goes. Then tell me. Olivia shot back, her voice sharp as a blade. Monica exhaled shakily, staring at the floor. This isn't just some group of dirty cops. She admitted. This is bigger. Graves isn't the top. He's just the enforcer. The real power? It goes up higher. Politicians, business leaders, even people in the justice system. Olivia's mouth went dry. Why are you working for them? She demanded. Monica's face darkened. They gave me a choice. She said flatly. Either I helped them, or I ended up like Bennett. Olivia felt like she'd been punched in the chest. She had known Monica for years, trusted her, and now? Now she had to make a choice. The standoff. A click. Ryan's gun was suddenly in Monica's hand. She had moved fast, too fast. Now, she had it aimed right at Olivia's chest. Ryan groaned in pain. Damn it, should have seen that coming. Olivia forced herself to stay still, to stay calm. She met Monica's gaze. You're really gonna do this? Monica swallowed, gripping the gun with both hands. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do, Olivia said quietly. Monica's fingers twitched on the trigger. You think if you hand us over, they'll let you walk away? Olivia pressed. They won't. You'll always be tied to them. They'll own you. Monica's hands shook. Olivia took a slow step forward. Bennett tried to do the right thing, and they made him disappear. She said, do you really think they won't do the same to you? To me? To Ryan? Monica's breathing hitched. Olivia saw it. The hesitation. The doubt. And then, bang. A gunshot shattered the air. The escape. Ryan groaned in agony, clutching his already wounded arm. But Monica? Monica was the one who fell. A bullet hole in her side. Blood blooming across her blouse. Olivia's heart slammed against her ribs as she spun toward the source of the shot. A shadow in the doorway. Captain Landon Graves. Gun still raised. His face was stone cold. Monica always had a soft spot for you. He mused. Knew it'd get her killed one day. Olivia's entire body went cold. She barely had time to process it before Graves fired again. She grabbed Ryan and threw them both behind the couch. Bullets ripped through the furniture, splintering wood and stuffing. Ryan groaned. This is, easily, the worst day of my life. Shut up and move, Olivia hissed, dragging him toward the back door. Monica was still breathing, but barely. They had no time. More footsteps. More men. They were outnumbered, trapped. And then, boom, a massive explosion rocked the alley outside. The entire apartment shook. Flames erupted from a nearby car, sending thick black smoke billowing upward. Graves cursed and ducked away from the blast, shielding his face. Ryan blinked. Was that supposed to happen? Olivia had no idea what was going on. And then, a black SUV skidded to a stop outside the burning alley. The back door flew open. Get in. James Bennett, bleeding, bruised, but alive, nowhere left to hide. Olivia didn't hesitate. She grabbed Ryan and threw them both into the SUV. Bennett floored it before Graves' men could react. Gunshots cracked through the night, shattering windows, but Bennett kept driving. Olivia's mind raced. You're supposed to be dead. She gasped. Bennett grinned, even though he was bleeding from the forehead. Takes more than a couple of dirty cops to kill me. Ryan groaned from the backseat. I think I'm actually dying. Though. Olivia ignored him. How did you find us? Bennett's jaw tightened. Because I know Graves. He said. Knew he'd go after Ryan first. I followed him here. Olivia exhaled shakily, still processing everything. Monica was dead. Graves was still out there. The entire system was after them now. She turned to Bennett. We need to go to the FBI. Bennett shook his head. Not safe. What do you mean not safe? Olivia snapped. This is bigger than we thought. We need federal protection. We can't trust them. Bennett cut in. Olivia stared at him. Bennett's face was dark, serious. There are people inside the bureau who are in on it too. He said. Ryan swore under his breath. Olivia's blood turned to ice. Then what the hell do we do? She whispered. Bennett's hands tightened on the wheel. We take it to the press. He said. We go public. Expose everything. A heavy silence filled the car. Then Olivia nodded. Then let's end this. Bennett pressed the gas pedal harder. Disappearing into the night. Behind them, the city still burned. And in the shadows, Graves was already hunting them down. Nowhere left to hide. The final betrayal. The road to nowhere. Judge Olivia Carter gripped the door handle of the SUV as Bennett tore through the deserted streets outside New Orleans. Ryan Thompson groaned in the backseat, his face pale, his wounded arm pressing against his chest. The SUV smelled like blood and burning rubber. We need to stop, Olivia said urgently. Ryan's losing too much blood. Bennett didn't look away from the road. If we stop, we die, he said flatly. The city lights faded behind them, swallowed by the darkness of the Louisiana backroads. Olivia turned, looking through the shattered rear window. There was no one following them. Yet, but she knew it wouldn't last. They weren't running from ordinary criminals. They were running from the system itself. Bennett's jaw tightened. We can't go to the FBI. We can't go to the cops. If we go to a hospital, we're dead. So what's the plan? Olivia snapped. Let Ryan bleed out in the backseat? Ryan groaned. I vote against that. Bennett exhaled sharply, then took a sudden sharp turn off the highway, heading down an unmarked dirt road. Within minutes, the SUV disappeared into the thick, looming trees of the bayou. They were completely off the grid, a ghost from the past. They pulled up to a rundown hunting cabin, deep in the swamp. Bennett shut off the engine and turned in his seat, looking at Olivia. There's someone here who can help us, he said. Olivia frowned. Who? Bennett hesitated. Then the door to the cabin creaked open. A woman stepped out onto the porch, holding a shotgun in one hand. Her eyes narrowed when she saw Bennett. Well, she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Look what the swamp dragged in. Olivia's breath hitched. It was former FBI agent Vanessa Cross. The woman who had disappeared 5 years ago. The woman who had exposed police corruption in Miami, only to have her career destroyed. Vanessa's gaze flickered to Olivia. You're the judge, aren't you? Olivia nodded slowly. Vanessa snorted, resting the shotgun against the railing. I hope you're smarter than this idiot, she said, nodding at Bennett. Bennett sighed. It's good to see you too. Ryan groaned from the backseat. Can we save the family reunion? I'm kinda dying here. Vanessa exhaled and motioned them inside. The plan. Ryan collapsed onto the couch while Vanessa grabbed medical supplies from a dusty first aid kit. You're lucky, she muttered, disinfecting his wound. Bullet went through clean. No organ damage. You'll live. Ryan let out a weak chuckle. Best news I've had all week. Olivia sat at the rickety wooden table, hands clasped. We need to go public, she said. We need to expose Graves and everyone behind him. Vanessa chuckled bitterly as she wrapped Ryan's arm. You think they're just gonna let you waltz onto the news and spill all their dirty secrets? She asked. They'll shut it down before it even airs. Olivia knew she was right. The police had control over the media. The system would protect itself. She needed leverage. We have documents, Bennett said, files proving their corruption. Vanessa shook her head. Not enough. You need something that'll make the public care. Something they can't ignore. Olivia thought for a moment. Then it hit her. Bennett, is there a video of Marcus Johnson's arrest? Bennett froze. A slow realization dawned over his face. There is, he admitted. Bodycam footage. It never made it into evidence. But it exists. Olivia's heart pounded. That was it. The public wouldn't care about internal documents. But a video? A raw, unfiltered recording of Marcus being humiliated and arrested for no reason? That could start a war. But they had to get it first. Bennett rubbed his temples. The footage is in the department's restricted archives. Only a few people have access. Like who? Olivia asked. Bennett exhaled. Captain Graves. The name sent a chill down Olivia's spine. Ryan groaned, shifting on the couch. So, let me get this straight. You want to break into the police department and steal the body cam footage? Vanessa crossed her arms. That's a suicide mission. Olivia's expression hardened. No, it's the only way to win. The setup. They spent the next 2 hours strategizing. They had to be smart. One wrong move, and they were dead. The station is too well guarded. Bennett said, we can't just walk in. So we make them come to us. Olivia said. Bennett frowned. What are you thinking? Olivia's eyes gleamed. We fake a leak. Vanessa leaned forward. Explain. We plant a fake story that we already have the footage. Olivia said. We make them panic. We force Graves to move the files somewhere safer. And when he does, we take them. Ryan chuckled weakly. That's insane. Olivia nodded. But it'll work. The betrayal. They used a burner phone to send an anonymous tip to a local journalist. Within 2 hours, a news headline appeared online. Breaking. Leaked police bodycam footage of wrongful arrest surfaces. Officials scrambled to contain fallout. It worked. By morning, Graves was moving the files. The department was in full lockdown mode. But Olivia didn't see the knife coming. At exactly 9 a.m., as they were preparing to intercept the transfer, gunshots ripped through the cabin walls. Bennett slammed into Olivia, knocking her to the ground. Ryan hit the floor, cursing. Vanessa dove for the shotgun, flipping the table for cover. They had found them. A voice shouted from outside. Come out, Judge Carter. It's over. Olivia's blood ran cold. She knew that voice. She turned her head slowly, looking through the bullet-riddled window. Monica Reyes, alive, and standing next to Captain Graves. Vanessa cursed. I knew we should have killed her. Olivia's heart pounded. Bennett grabbed his gun, reloading. We're outnumbered. Ryan groaned. I'm too injured for a damn gunfight. Then, from outside, Monica's voice, sharp and cutting. Olivia, I swear, if you don't come out, we'll burn this whole place down. Olivia clenched her jaw. She had just made a fatal mistake. And now, they were trapped. The final reckoning, justice in the fire. Trapped like rats. Judge Olivia Carter could hear her own heartbeat thudding in her ears. Gunshots had shattered the windows. Wood splintered from the walls. Smoke curled in the air from the bullet holes. Outside, Monica Reyes and Captain Landon Graves had them surrounded. Bennett crouched beside her, gripping his pistol. We're sitting ducks. Ryan groaned from the floor, his injured arm bleeding through the bandages. You don't say. Vanessa Cross, the former FBI agent turned rogue, peeked through the shattered window. They brought at least 6 men, she muttered. They don't want a firefight. They want us alive. Olivia's stomach twisted. Alive, not dead. That meant they had plans for her. And that scared her more than anything. A devil's bargain. Outside, Monica's voice rang through the clearing. Olivia, you've got nowhere left to run. Olivia's fingers curled into a fist. She had trusted Monica, believed in her, and now? Now she was leading the charge to have her executed. Monica stepped forward, her gun raised. Come out, and we'll make a deal. Olivia and Bennett exchanged a look. Vanessa scoffed. You really think we're dumb enough to negotiate? But Olivia knew Monica too well. If she was offering a deal, it meant she was desperate. Which meant, Graves didn't have everything he needed. Olivia took a deep breath. Then she stood up, ignoring Bennett's curse, ignoring Ryan's weak attempt to grab her sleeve. She walked toward the broken doorway. Vanessa hissed. This is suicide. Olivia ignored her. She stepped out into the open, hands raised. Monica smirked. There she is, she said, lowering her gun slightly. But Olivia wasn't looking at her. She was looking at Graves. The police captain stood beside Monica, his gun holstered. His stance was casual, too casual, but his eyes burned with cold calculation. Smart move, Judge, he said. I knew you'd listen to reason. Olivia tilted her head. You need something from me. Graves chuckled. Always the sharp one. Then he turned to Monica. Tell her. Monica hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "The video isn't the only thing." Olivia's pulse jumped. "There's something else?" she asked. Monica swallowed hard. "There's a ledger," she admitted. "A record of payments, names, dates, everything. It proves Graves has been running this operation for years." Olivia's eyes widened. That was the real key. Not just a video. Proof. Names. Money trails. The kind of evidence that could bring down the entire system. Graves sighed, shaking his head. "You always talk too much, Monica." Then, bang! Monica jerked forward. A bloom of red exploded from her chest. She stumbled, gasping. Her eyes met Olivia's, wide with shock. Then she collapsed. Dead. Olivia barely had time to react before Graves raised his gun at her next. The firefight. Bennett fired first. The bullet caught Graves in the shoulder, sending him stumbling back. Then, chaos. Gunfire erupted from both sides. Vanessa burst out of the cabin, shotgun blasting. Bennett pulled Olivia back just as a bullet grazed her arm, burning hot against her skin. Ryan, still injured, somehow managed to roll off the couch and fire from the doorway. The clearing exploded in gunfire. 2 of Graves' men went down immediately. Another one dropped as Vanessa put a slug through his chest. But Graves was still standing, still moving, and his men weren't done yet. The end of the monster. Graves disappeared into the woods, using the chaos as cover. Olivia saw him run, and she ran after him. "Olivia, wait!" Bennett shouted, but she was done waiting. She chased Graves through the trees, her heart hammering, her lungs burned, but she kept moving. Then, suddenly, Graves turned, gun raised, aimed directly at her. Olivia skidded to a stop, raising her own gun. They stood there, 2 people, 2 sides of justice. Graves smirked. "You should have taken the deal, Judge." Olivia's hand didn't shake. "You should have never underestimated me." Bang! The shot rang through the trees, and Graves fell. Olivia stood there, gun still raised. As the monster finally hit the ground, she exhaled. It was over. Justice in the ashes. By the time Bennett, Ryan, and Vanessa caught up, Olivia was standing over Graves' body. Ryan wheezed. "Damn, remind me never to piss you off." Vanessa checked Graves' pulse. "He's gone." Bennett picked up the gun from Graves' body. Then, he reached into the dead captain's pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound book. The ledger. The proof they needed. Olivia felt something inside her chest loosen. It was done. One last move. The next morning, the world exploded with the truth. The body cam footage was leaked. The ledger was published. Every news outlet in the country ran the story. Exclusive. Police corruption network exposed. Evidence links high-ranking officials to criminal operation. Arrests were made. The entire chain of command in the New Orleans PD was dismantled. And Olivia Carter? She was at the center of it all. She had survived. She had won. But as she stood in front of the cameras, answering questions, she felt something. Not relief. Not yet. Because corruption never truly dies. There would always be another Graves. Another cover-up. Another fight. And she would be there when it happened. Ready. Waiting. Epilogue. The call. That night, Olivia sat alone in her office. A knock came at the door. Bennett. He tossed something onto her desk. A burner phone. It had one message. "You only killed one head of the snake. There are more, and we're watching." Olivia's hands clenched. She looked up at Bennett. "So, what do we do now?" Bennett smirked. "Simple." He picked up the phone and crushed it under his boot. "We go hunting." Real-world connection. Lessons from the story. The story of Judge Olivia Carter's battle against corruption isn't just fiction. It reflects real struggles happening today in law enforcement, politics, and the justice system. Small diamond corruption thrives in secrecy. The police conspiracy in the story mirrors real-world cases where bad actors protect each other, making it difficult to expose the truth. In life, transparency and accountability are the strongest weapons against injustice. Small diamond power protects itself. Like Captain Graves and his network, those in power often silence dissenters. That's why whistleblowers, investigative journalists, and courageous individuals like Olivia Carter are essential in exposing wrongdoing. Small diamond justice requires risk. Olivia risked her career, safety, and life to bring the truth to light. In reality, standing up against corruption or discrimination isn't easy. But change only happens when people refuse to back down. Key takeaways for today. Checkmark: question authority. Blind trust enables corruption. Stay informed and challenge the system when needed. Checkmark: support transparency. Push for body cams, independent oversight, and ethical leadership. Checkmark: speak out. Silence allows injustice to grow. Whether at work, in politics, or in communities, use your voice. Checkmark: stay vigilant. Corruption doesn't end with one victory. It always finds new ways to survive. Keep fighting. Revolving light: justice isn't just the responsibility of leaders, it's on all of us. Be aware, stay engaged, fight for what's right.